The emergency klaxons blared throughout the Galactic Council's grand chamber, drowning out the panicked shouts of 100 different species. Councillor Vexarin of the Trilaxian Confederation gripped the polished obsidian surface of his command podium with all four of his upper appendages, his usually pristine silver scales now dulled with stress and fear. "Confirm that reading," he barked at his subordinate, a young Palaxian whose translucent skin had turned an alarming shade of purple, the species' involuntary response to extreme terror. It's confirmed, High Counselor," the aide stammered, mandibles clicking rapidly. "The signature is unmistakable. It's a human warship, designation unknown. It just appeared at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. Our outpost there sent 3 warning transmissions before going silent." Vexarin closed his primary set of eyes and felt the familiar cold dread settle into his thoracic cavity. For 3 centuries, the Council had maintained a careful quarantine around Sol system, containing the bizarre and terrifying species that called the unremarkable Yellow Star home. 300 years of vigilance, of carefully staged first contact scenarios with primitive colonies on Mars and Titan that suggested humanity was but one insignificant member of a vast, peaceful confederation. 300 years of elaborate deception, all to keep humanity from discovering the truth about their place in the cosmos. And now, a human warship had bypassed the quarantine. Somehow they had developed technology that should have been centuries beyond their reach. How? Vexarin's question came out as barely more than a whisper, but in the sudden silence that had fallen over the chamber, it might as well have been a thunderclap. First Admiral Kethral of the Galactic Defense Fleet stepped forward, her cybernetically enhanced exoskeleton whirring softly. The Draxian military leader had been the lone voice advocating for humanity's extermination rather than isolation, ever since the Council had first observed Earth's primitive nuclear exchanges nearly 3 centuries ago. "They've developed an independent form of faster-than-light travel," she said, voice metallic through her translator. "Our analysts believe it's some variation of dimensional folding rather than traditional slip space technology. We've never seen anything like it." A murmur of disbelief swept through the assembled counselors. The implications were staggering. Not only had humans broken quarantine, they'd done so by inventing an entirely new method of interstellar travel. "Show me the vessel," Vexarin commanded, and the chamber's central holographic projector flickered to life. The image that appeared caused several counselors to exclaim in their native tongues. Where galactic standard ships were elegant organic curves designed to work with space-time rather than against it, the human vessel was an aggressive, angular monstrosity. Its hull was matte black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, making its true dimensions difficult to discern. But even conservative estimates put it at nearly 2 kilometers in length, larger than any Council battleship. Protruding from its hull were what could only be weapon emplacements. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of them. And what appeared to be some kind of energy shield shimmered around its perimeter, distorting the stars behind it. "By the void," whispered Councillor Mira of the Solarian Conclave, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing rapidly along her tendrils. "They built that in secret. On Earth." "No," First Admiral Kethral said, her voice carrying a note of grudging respect. "According to the limited sensor data we received before losing contact with Proxima Station, this vessel appears to have been constructed in deep space. There are trace signatures suggesting it was assembled in the Orc cloud beyond their system's edge, away from our observation posts." Vexarin felt his scales ripple with unease. For centuries, the Council had maintained that humanity needed to be contained because of their unpredictable aggression, their alarming technological progress, and their bizarre biological adaptability. But privately, many counselors acknowledged the truth. Humans terrified them because they were different in ways that defied explanation. Where every other spacefaring race had developed according to predictable patterns, technological advancement following clear evolutionary pressures, humans seemed to operate on pure chaotic innovation. They solved problems sideways, developed technologies in the wrong order, and demonstrated cognitive leaps that sometimes bordered on precognition. A species that could imagine 1,000 ways to destroy itself and then build safeguards against each one. A species that turned its most destructive impulses into art. A species whose first response to discovering they were alone in their system wasn't despair, but determination to reach beyond it. "The human vessel is hailing all frequencies," announced the communications officer, another Trilaxian whose scales had gone nearly white with stress. "They're broadcasting in over 200 different formats, including several we've never documented before, and they're using Galactic Standard." A hush fell over the chamber. That was impossible. The quarantine had been absolute. No human should have ever heard Galactic Standard, let alone be fluent enough to transmit in it. "Put it through," Vexerin said, squaring his shoulders. Whatever was coming, the council would face it with dignity. The holographic projector shifted, and a figure appeared above the central dais. Bipedal, as expected, with the characteristic lack of protective exoskeleton that made humans look so unnervingly vulnerable to other species. This one appeared to be a female, with dark skin and close-cropped hair, wearing what was clearly a military uniform of deep blue with silver insignia. What struck Vexerin most, however, were the humans' eyes. They held no fear, no awe at addressing the combined leadership of over 3,000 star systems. They held only a cool, measured confidence that sent a tremor through his spine. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the human said. Her voice translated perfectly into Galactic Standard, with an accent and inflection that suggested years of study. "I am Captain Alexandra Chen of the Earth Alliance vessel Prometheus. We know about the quarantine. We know about the observation posts. We know about the false first contacts on Mars and Titan." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "We've known for decades, and now we're done waiting for an invitation." Vexerin felt the chamber temperature drop several degrees as climate control systems struggled to compensate for the physiological responses of dozens of different species experiencing collective shock. "This vessel carries representatives from all Earth nations and colonies. We come with a simple message. The quarantine ends today. Humanity is joining the galactic community, whether you're ready for us or not." The human captain's lips curved into what Vexerin recognized as a smile, though xenopsychologists had long debated whether the expression indicated amusement, aggression, or both when displayed by humans. "We've brought gifts as a show of good faith," she continued. "Medical technologies, engineering innovations, and cultural archives. We've also brought something your military leaders will find particularly interesting." Her smile widened slightly. "Defensive capabilities that even your most advanced systems can't penetrate. We demonstrated the small sample at Proxima Station. Your outpost is unharmed, merely offline while they process what they witnessed." Vexerin exchanged glances with First Admiral Kethrol, whose cybernetic eyes had narrowed to glowing slits. "You have one standard rotation to send a diplomatic delegation to this vessel," Captain Chen said, her tone making it clear this was not a request. "We prefer peace, cooperation, and mutual exchange of knowledge. But make no mistake." The transmission suddenly split into multiple views, showing dozens of similar human vessels appearing simultaneously across Council space, near major hubs and strategic locations. "We will not be contained any longer." The transmission ended, leaving the Grand Chamber in stunned silence as the Galactic Council faced its greatest fear. Humanity had arrived, and they were more advanced, more prepared, and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The Council chamber remained silent for 7 excruciating seconds after the transmission ended. 7 seconds in which the most powerful beings in the galaxy contemplated how thoroughly they had underestimated the species they had tried so desperately to contain. Councillor Thrix of the Arachnoid Collective was the first to speak, her voice a rhythmic clicking that her translator rendered into crisp, methodical Galactic Standard. "The humans have clearly been aware of our observation for some time. They deliberately kept their advanced research hidden from our outposts. The question is, How much do they actually know about us? Vexerin turned all four eyes toward the massive strategic display, where dozens of blinking red indicators showed human vessels near major trade hubs, military outposts, and cultural centers. The pattern wasn't random. They had targeted locations with precise strategic value, places where their sudden appearance would cause maximum psychological impact without presenting an overt military threat. They know enough, he said finally. The question isn't how much they know about us, but how much we fail to learn about them. First Admiral Catherall stalked to the center of the chamber, her metallic exoskeleton clicking against the polished floor. I'd warned this council 3 centuries ago. After observing their first primitive nuclear exchanges, I said they should be eliminated, not studied. A species that develops weapons before philosophy, war before unity. They were always going to be a threat. And, yet, came the melodic voice of Elder Saphira of the Lumidian Convergence. They appear to have achieved unity despite their warlike nature. The ancient being glided forward, her translucent body pulsing with soft blue light. As one of the oldest species in the Council, the Lumidians were respected for their long view of history. This Earth alliance suggests cooperation among their kind. Perhaps they evolved beyond our predictions. Vexerin flicked a command into his neural interface, bringing up the historical archives. Our first observation of Earth was over 5 centuries ago, shortly after they developed radio technology. Our xenoanthropologists predicted they would destroy themselves within a century. When they survived their nuclear era, the prediction was revised. They would reach space, exhaust their resources, and collapse into primitive feudalism within 2 centuries. He gestured at the image of the human vessel still frozen on the display. Instead, they've developed technology that our best scientific minds considered theoretical. They've expanded throughout their system and beyond, all while making us believe they were still limited to their homeworld and a few primitive colonies. A deliberate deception, growled Catherall. They must have detected our observation posts centuries ago and fed them false information while conducting their real work elsewhere. In the back of the chamber, a small delegation from the Commerce Guild was engaged in hurried whispers, their credit-calculating implants blinking rapidly as they processed the potential economic implications of human contact. Vexerin felt a surge of disgust. Even faced with a potential existential threat, some species could only think of profit. The human mentioned gifts, said Counselor Mira, her bioluminescent patterns forming complex shapes that express both curiosity and caution. Advanced medical technology. What could they possibly have developed that our combined civilizations haven't? An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. It was the question no one wanted to ask, because it challenged the fundamental assumption that had guided council policy for millennia. That technological and cultural development followed predictable, universal patterns. That, given enough time, all intelligent species would arrive at similar solutions to the universe's challenges. Humans had already disproven that assumption once by developing FTL travel through means no council species had considered viable. What else had they discovered while isolated in their corner of the galaxy? We need to understand their intentions, Vexerin said, returning to the central issue. This Captain Chen spoke of peace and cooperation, yet arrived in a warship. Their vessels have appeared at strategic locations throughout council space without permission. These are not the actions of a species seeking peaceful integration. Perhaps not by our standards. Elder Saphira countered, her voice ethereal. But consider what they know of us. From their perspective, we have imprisoned them in their home system through deception. We have denied them contact with other intelligent life for centuries. If I were human, I might approach such a first meeting with caution as well. Caution is bringing an escort. First Admiral Catherall snapped. This is a show of force, a demonstration of capability. It is the precursor to conquest. The Admiral's words hung heavy in the air, giving voice to the fear that had lurked beneath the Council's quarantine policy from the beginning. Humans were unpredictable, innovative, and adaptable in ways that defied conventional understanding. If they turn those qualities toward conquest, we have one standard rotation to send a diplomatic delegation, Vexeren reminded them. We need to make a decision. On one of the secondary displays, surveillance footage from Proxima Station had finally been recovered and was playing in a continuous loop. It showed the human vessel, the Prometheus, appearing literally from nowhere, the fabric of space-time folding around it like paper being creased and then smoothed out again. The station's automatic defense systems had activated immediately, surrounding the human ship with a web of energy. And then, somehow, the energy had simply flowed around the vessel, redirected without being absorbed or deflected in the conventional sense. The human ship had then emitted a pulse of some kind, not disruptive or destructive, but something that had caused all of the station's systems to gracefully power down, leaving the personnel unharmed but unable to communicate. It was a demonstration of both defensive and offensive capabilities, unlike anything in the Council's arsenal, delivered with surgical precision. A warning without bloodshed. We have no choice but to send the delegation, Vexeren said, watching the footage repeat. Refusal would only justify whatever suspicions they already harbor about our intentions. I volunteer to lead it, Elder Saphira said. Surprising many in the chamber, the ancient Lumidian rarely left the Council homeworld. My species has the longest contact with pre-FTL civilizations. If anyone can gauge their true intentions, it is I, Vexeren nodded slowly. First Admiral, will you also join the delegation? Your military expertise may prove valuable, and perhaps seeing their technology firsthand will help us better understand the situation. Cathral's cybernetic eyes flickered with calculations. I will go, but I recommend we also quietly mobilize the 5th and 7th fleets. If this is the prelude to an invasion, we should be prepared. As the Council debated the composition of the delegation and appropriate security measures, none noticed the small maintenance drone in the upper corner of the chamber, its optical sensors focused intently on the proceedings, transmitting everything on a frequency that no Council technology monitored, because no Council species had ever considered it viable for communication. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Alexandra Chen watched the Council's deliberations with a tight smile. Phase 1 was complete. The real work was about to begin. Captain Chen watched the approaching Council shuttle through the Prometheus's observation deck. The massive transparent aluminum viewport offered a sweeping view of space, currently dominated by the ornate diplomatic vessel sent by the Galactic Council. Its organic curves and bioluminescent accents stood in stark contrast to the angular, utilitarian design of her own ship. "They're scanning us again," reported Lieutenant Commander Diane Park, the ship's tactical officer. Her fingers danced across the neural interface as she monitored the incoming data. 7th time in the last hour. They're particularly interested in our dimensional fold drive. Let them look, Chen replied, straightening her uniform. Operation Glasnost is working exactly as intended. Behind her, Dr. Thomas Rivera, the mission's chief xenobiologist, cleared his throat. Alex, are you sure about this approach? The Council delegates include some of their most influential members. If this goes wrong, it won't, Chen interrupted, turning to face her old friend. They had trained together at the academy, back when humanity was still pretending it knew nothing of alien life. We've spent 50 years preparing for this moment, Tom. Every simulation, every intelligence report, every psychological profile points to the same conclusion. The Council fears what it doesn't understand, and nothing confuses them more than humans. Rivera nodded reluctantly. As the shuttle drew closer, the bridge crew took their positions. Unlike the bridge crews in old Earth science fiction, with their dramatic lighting and impractical layouts, the Prometheus's command center was designed for maximum efficiency. Each station was equipped with redundant systems, and the crew had trained together for years, becoming a single organism in times of crisis. Captain, called out Communications Officer Sarah Lynn, I'm picking up some unusual transmissions from the Council homeworld. High bandwidth, encrypted. Military channels. Chen exchanged a glance with her XO, Commander James Okafor. They're mobilizing their fleets, he said quietly. Just as you predicted. Good, Chen replied. Fear makes them predictable. We need that. The shuttle was now less than 5 minutes from docking. Chen took a deep breath, mentally reviewing the intelligence on each council member in the approaching delegation. Elder Saphira of the Lumidians, ancient, cautious, but surprisingly open-minded. First Admiral Kethral, aggressive, paranoid, but respected for her tactical mind. 3 lesser counselors, included for political balance rather than any real authority. And 1 surprise addition that had nearly thrown their carefully constructed plan into chaos. Final confirmation on Grand Arbiter Zell, Chen asked, unable to keep a hint of tension from her voice. Okafor handed her a data tablet. Intelligence just sent this through the quantum link. He's definitely aboard that shuttle. First time he's left the High Sanctuary in over 2 centuries. Chen swore under her breath. Zell was the oldest living member of the Council, a progenitor, one of the first spacefaring races that had formed the original Galactic Compact nearly a millennium ago. His species was thought to be nearly extinct, with fewer than 100 individuals remaining in the known galaxy. His presence changed everything. He must have sensed something, Chen murmured. Their intelligence on us is better than we thought. Do we abort? Okafor asked, keeping his voice low enough that only she could hear. Chen looked around at her crew, the best Earth had to offer, representing a unified humanity that had spent generations preparing for this moment. Then she gazed out at the stars beyond, where dozens of human ships like the Prometheus had positioned themselves throughout Council space. Each one carried a piece of the puzzle, a component of humanity's grand entrance onto the galactic stage. No, she said finally. We proceed as planned, but be ready to implement contingency Orion at my command. Okafor's eyes widened slightly. That's extreme, Captain. So is sending a progenitor to meet a species they've quarantined for centuries, Chen replied. They're more afraid than we anticipated. That makes them more dangerous. The shuttle was now visible to the naked eye, its hull gleaming with the iridescent materials unique to Council engineering. As it approached the Prometheus's docking bay, a strange energy signature began to emanate from its bow. Not a weapon, but something equally concerning. Captain, called out Science Officer Han Zhong, his voice tight with alarm. They're bringing some kind of temporal analysis device. It's trying to read our timeline. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. They weren't just afraid of humanity's technology. They suspected the truth. The one secret Earth had kept hidden even from their most sophisticated surveillance. Battle stations, Chen ordered, her voice deadly calm. Seal all restricted areas and prepare to receive our guests. And someone get me Admiral Singh on a secure channel. Tell him Operation Looking Glass may be compromised. As klaxons sounded throughout the massive vessel, Chen straightened her shoulders and headed for the docking bay. The next few minutes would determine the future of humanity among the stars, if humanity had a future at all. The Council delegation stepped through the airlock with ceremonial precision. Elder Saphira glided in first, her translucent form rippling with patterns of light that reflected her nervous anticipation. First Admiral Kethral followed, exoskeleton gleaming under the Prometheus's lights, flanked by 2 junior counselors who couldn't hide their wide-eyed wonder at the human ship's interior. Last came Grand Arbiter Zell. Chen had studied every available record of progenitors, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. Zell stood barely a meter tall, his body a shifting mass of crystalline structures that seemed to both absorb and emit light simultaneously. His eyes, if they could be called that, were deep voids that somehow conveyed ancient intelligence. Captain Alexander Chen, the Arbiter said, his voice bypassing the standard translation protocols and appearing directly in her mind. Your kind has surprised us. Not an easy feat for a species as old as mine. Chen maintained her composure despite the unexpected telepathic contact. Grand Arbiter, we didn't anticipate your presence. That, Zell replied, was precisely the point. Before Chen could respond, her neural link buzzed with an urgent alert from the engine room. She kept her expression neutral as Commander Okafor's voice filled her mind through the secure channel. "Captain, we have a situation. The temporal analysis device they brought aboard. It's not just scanning our timeline. It's interfering with the quantum stabilizers on decks 37 through 42. Chen felt ice water in her veins. Those decks housed the ship's most classified technology, the very heart of Operation Looking Glass. Your device is affecting sensitive equipment, Grand Arbiter, Chen said evenly. I must ask you to deactivate it immediately. A sound like crystal chimes filled the air as Zell made what might have been a laugh. Fascinating. You speak as though you have a choice in the matter. First Admiral Kethral stepped forward, and Chen noticed the subtle shift in her stance, a predator preparing to strike. We know what you're hiding, Captain. Or should I say, what you're all hiding. The docking bay's lights flickered momentarily as something deep within the Prometheus responded to the Council's device. Alarms that had been silent moments before began to wail throughout the ship. Captain. Zhang's panicked voice came through her neural link. Something's happening to the Looking Glass prototype. The quantum field is destabilizing. It's beginning to resonate with their scanner. Chen tapped a sequence on her wrist computer, activating emergency containment protocols, but the warning indicators only intensified. You don't understand what you're doing, she told the Council delegation, abandoning diplomacy. That technology isn't meant to be probed this way. You're creating a dangerous feedback loop. No, Captain, Elder Saphira said, her luminescence pulsing with what seemed like genuine concern. It is you who doesn't understand. The technology you've discovered, the Looking Glass, it isn't just a new form of propulsion or weapon. It's much more. The ship shuddered violently beneath their feet. On Chen's neural display, emergency alerts cascaded through every system. It's a door. Grand Arbiter Zell continued where Saphira had left off. A door that was sealed long before my species achieved sentience. A door that should remain closed. Another, more powerful tremor shook the ship. Through the viewport, Chen could see space itself beginning to ripple around the Prometheus, reality distorting like heat waves over desert sand. What's happening? Demanded Kethral, her military composure finally cracking. Chen's response was cut short as her neural link exploded with panicked reports from all decks. But it was Commander Okafor's voice that cut through. The chaos. 3 words that confirmed her worst fears. They're coming through. The Prometheus shuddered as reality itself seemed to tear open within its depths. Emergency containment fields snapped into place throughout the vessel, compartmentalizing the ship as crew members raced to battle stations. Chen grabbed her sidearm, an instinctive reaction that seemed laughably inadequate given what was happening. All personnel to emergency stations, she barked into her neural link. Initiate contingency Orion. Authorization, Chen Alpha 70. Grand Arbiter Zell's crystalline form pulsed with urgent patterns of light. Captain, you must shut down your Looking Glass technology immediately. Your people don't understand what you've awakened. We didn't awaken anything, Chen shot back. Your scanning device triggered this reaction. The ship lurched again, more violently this time. Through the viewport, they could see other Council vessels breaking formation, moving away from the Prometheus as if fleeing contagion. Captain. Zhang's voice cut through the chaos on her neural link. The quantum field has fully destabilized. We're detecting multiple entities emerging from the rift. Entities. First Admiral Kethral demanded, her exoskeleton's weapon systems humming to life. What kind of entities? Before Chen could respond, the deck beneath them rippled like liquid. The laws of physics seemed to bend as a shimmering translucent figure rose through the solid metal floor. It was vaguely humanoid but composed entirely of shifting light and darkness, like a living hologram. Then another appeared, and another. Soon a dozen of the strange beings stood in the docking bay, surrounding the humans and Council delegation. Progenitors, whispered Elder Saphira, her luminescence dimming in what appeared to be reverence or fear. One of the beings stepped forward, its form solidifying slightly as it focused on Grand Arbiter Zell. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through air, but directly in the minds of everyone present. "You have forgotten your purpose, children," it said. "The quarantine was never meant to contain humanity. It was meant to protect them." Grand Arbiter Zell's crystalline form dimmed slightly. "Ancestor," he acknowledged with what seemed like shame. "We believed we were following your directives." The beam turned toward Chen, its featureless face somehow conveying sadness. "Alexandra Chen, your people discovered our beacon and called it the Looking Glass. We left it for you to find when you were ready." Chen lowered her weapon slowly, understanding dawning. "The technology we reverse-engineered for our dimensional folding drive. It was meant for us all along." "Yes," the being confirmed. "Humanity was not quarantined because you were dangerous to the galaxy. You were separated because you are its inheritors." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The council delegation stood frozen, centuries of assumptions shattered in an instant. The Galactic Council was created to shepherd the younger races until humanity evolved enough to take its place. The being continued. But fear corrupted their purpose. Instead of guardians, they became jailers. First Admiral Kethral stepped forward, cybernetic eyes narrowing. "This is absurd. Humans are violent, unpredictable. Humans are adaptable," interrupted the being. "In all our travels across countless galaxies, no species has shown humanity's capacity for rapid evolution, both biological and cultural. The very traits you fear are what make them the perfect inheritors." Chen finally understood the true purpose of Operation Looking Glass. Earth's leadership had suspected something like this, but never knew the full truth. The dimensional technology wasn't just a means of transportation. It was a beacon, calling to the original architects of galactic civilization. "What happens now?" Chen asked, holstering her weapon completely. The being's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "Now, Captain Chen, the real first contact begins. Not between humanity and the Council, but between all of you and us." Its attention turned to the Council delegation. "Your fear of humanity ends today. Your role as mentors begins." The being raised what approximated an arm, and suddenly the viewport showed hundreds of similar entities appearing near human and Council ships throughout the galaxy, bridges forming between vessels that had been on the brink of conflict moments before. Ken's neural link chimed with an incoming transmission from Admiral Singh. His voice was filled with awe as he reported the same phenomenon occurring across every human outpost in the galaxy. "The progenitors have returned," Singh whispered, "and they've chosen humanity to lead the way forward." 3 months after the return of the progenitors, Captain Alexandra Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Station. The massive structure orbited in neutral space between Earth and the Council homeworld, a physical symbol of the new alliance forming between humanity and the galactic community. Below her, representatives from over 500 species mingled in the grand atrium. Humans walked among beings of every conceivable form, crystalline entities that communicated through light patterns, gaseous intelligences contained within specially designed suits, even the normally reclusive aquatic marines who rarely left their oceanic homeworlds. The fear and suspicion that had defined first contact was gradually being replaced by cautious curiosity. "Still getting used to it?" Commander Okafor asked, joining her at the viewport. Chen nodded, watching as a group of Council scientists examined a holographic display of human dimensional folding technology. The progenitors had confirmed that humanity's unique approach, discovered accidentally through reverse engineering the beacon, was unlike anything the Council races had considered possible. Now that technology was being freely shared. "I keep thinking about how close we came to war," she said quietly. "If their scanning device hadn't triggered the beacon, or if you hadn't ordered contingency Orion," Okafor added. "The progenitors said that your command sequence was what finally activated the full signal. You called them home, Alex." She brushed off the praise, uncomfortable with the reverence some had begun to show her. "I was just following protocol." The real question is what happens now. As if summoned by her words, Grand Arbiter Zell appeared beside them, his crystalline form reflecting the starlight. Unlike before, his presence no longer triggered alarm or suspicion. "Your people are adapting well," he observed. "The council races are still adjusting." Chen understood the understatement. For species that had built their entire civilization on certain fundamental assumptions, learning that humans had been destined to join them as equals, or even leaders, was profoundly disruptive. First Admiral Kethral has requested a position on the Joint Military Command, Zell continued. A surprising development, given her previous stance on humanity. "People can change," Chen replied. "Species can change. That's the point, isn't it? That's what the progenitors saw in us." Zell's form pulsed with what she now recognized as agreement. The capacity for rapid adaptation, the ability to reimagine yourselves and your society within a single lifetime. Even my kind required millennia to make such transformations. In the atrium below, a group of human children had arrived from the Earth Embassy, wide-eyed as they encountered alien species for the first time. Unlike the adults, they showed no hesitation, approaching a towering Krull warrior with curious questions that the translator struggled to keep up with. "They'll grow up in a different universe than we did," Okafor observed. "No quarantine, no secrets, just endless possibilities." Chen felt a presence in her mind, gentle, unlike the invasive contact she'd first experienced with the progenitors. They had explained that as humans worked with the dimensional technology, many would develop similar abilities, bridging the gap between species in ways previously unimaginable. "The looking glass goes both ways," she murmured, remembering the progenitors' words during their private council. "We see them, they see us. That's how understanding begins." Below, Elder Saphira had joined the children, her luminescent form creating patterns that made them laugh with delight. Council security personnel who would have once been alarmed by such close contact now stood back, relaxed and observant. Chen turned away from the viewport, facing the vast expanse of stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the remaining progenitor vessels were reactivating ancient networks, preparing the galaxy for what they called the next phase. They had been deliberately vague about what that entailed, insisting that knowing too much too soon would only create new fears. "Humanity's worst fear was being alone in the universe," Chen said. "The Council's worst fear was humanity itself. Turns out we were both wrong about what we should have been afraid of." "And what should we have feared?" Zell asked. Ken smiled, watching as a human diplomat and a Tralaxian counselor shook hands, sealing some minor accord. "Stagnation. Isolation. The walls we build to keep each other out." She gestured toward the gathering below. "This is just the beginning. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As if in response, the stars outside seemed to pulse slightly brighter, a subtle reminder that the progenitors were watching, waiting to see what their chosen inheritors would build from the foundation they had left behind.